Curt Cignetti and the Indiana Hoosiers have been super busy in the transfer portal. Could there be more news on the way?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. So glad that you can be here. You can obviously tell by the video, the audio possibly, that we are still not home just yet, still traveling around for the holidays. But man, as we get closer to the new year, just glad to be here. Glad that you're here. December has been a record-breaking month for Locked On Hoosiers. So thank you so much for that, and to all of my everydayers. I'm worried about Indiana men's basketball. Just want to put that out there. We're going to get to that a little bit later. I'm worried. I'm concerned. I think we may be in for a really long Big Ten schedule, especially when Mike Woodson starts dropping comments like he did after this weekend's win. We'll get to that in just a little bit. Where should Indiana football continue to go in the transfer portal? But I think more news could be on the way. And I think it's important that we kind of recap what's been happening so far. You and I have covered a lot of this. There's been a couple that have been added since the last time I did an episode. And so I want us to kind of recap the players, the 11 transfers that Indiana has brought in so far. And I also think it's important for us to look at the guys that are leaving, right? Is there any big name that's leaving this roster that I think Indiana has to replace, or that we're going to miss, or that we may feel on and off the field next season? Let's start there, okay? Let's start with the ones that Indiana is losing. You're bringing in 11. We're going to talk about those in a second. And as of right now, you're losing 11 as well. As of this recording, 11 guys have made it public that they are leaving Indiana football, right? I mean, and it's all over the field. I mean, obviously, a couple of quarterbacks, right? Taven Jackson was the big news. Elijah Green, the running back. You've lost some offensive linemen. You lost Donovan McCulley, right? The wide receiver. You've lost a couple of DBs, DJ Warnell, Tyreek McDaniel. I mean, you've lost some of those guys to the portal. One that I've seen a lot of fans questioning whether this was a big loss or not was JoJo Johnson, the corner. And no disrespect to him at all, I just don't see how this is a big loss for us. I mean, it's a guy who's been here for 2 years, never touched the field, has 2 years of eligibility now, right? And so if he wants to play, he had to go. And I think it's as simple as that. Does Indiana lose depth at that position? Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess you could call him depth if you wanted to. But for somebody that never touched the field, I just don't see how that is all that important. So overall, and I guess a lot of people, a lot of fans, a lot of podcasters may say this, but I just don't feel like we've lost a whole lot in the portal so far. So far. Nothing that cannot be replaced or has not already been replaced by this coaching staff. Something else that's important we need to mention are the guys that are coming back. We've already talked about Aiden Fisher, right? The All-American at linebacker, your leader on the defensive side of the football. Believe we already talked about EJ Williams as well, the wide receiver who has decided to come back and be a key player in the receiver room for Indiana. But one that I don't think we mentioned yet, because it happened on Christmas Day, is Michael Kamara, the defensive end, one of the leaders on the defensive line for Indiana, has announced that he will return for another season at Indiana. Talk about another big time guy coming back. I mean, a big name, an experienced guy who, with 1 year of eligibility, is going to give you everything he's got. Between him, Fisher, D'Angelo Pons, I mean, those are huge names coming back for Indiana defensively, which was one of the best defenses in the entire country, in case people have forgotten that. And so I think that is such big news for Kamara and Fisher and Pons, everybody coming back for one more year on the defensive side of the football. And I count those as additions. I count those as maybe not incoming transfers, but in this day and age, right? In this day and age of college football, where those guys could do anything, right? They could take more classes and graduate early. They could go to the NFL. They could transfer somewhere else. I mean, there's so many options now for players when their careers are nearing the end. But those guys said, no, no, I want to give it one more ride. I want to be in Bloomington at Indiana and see if we can run it back to the college football playoff, which is incredible to look at. So I count those as additions on top of the 11 that Indiana is truly bringing in through the transfer portal. Now, we've seen this at several different positions, right? We've seen a couple of running backs with BB coming in. You've got a punter now with Mitch McCarthy. That's cool. We've seen where the struggles came in with that. Good to go get somebody from Central Florida, which is Power 4, by the way. You picked up Brandon Frank, the kicker as well from Texas State. I still like a Marion Knighton, the DB from Northern Illinois. I'm telling you, I think he's somebody that's going to see significant playing time, whether it be this coming year or the following year, as a guy who has 2 years of eligibility. You filled in that defensive line with Dominique Ratcliffe and Hosea Wheeler on top of who's already coming back. I think the defensive line could be one of the most solidified positions on Indiana's roster next season. You bring in Nowakowski, the tight end from Wisconsin. You had to get somebody. You lost your big name, had to go get one, and Indiana did just that. Of course, Roman Hemby, I think, who is your starting running back this next season. The Maryland transfer with 1 year of eligibility. Really, really like what he brings to 22 touchdowns, almost 2,400 yards in his career at Maryland. Yeah, that's pretty solid. And I think he'll be your starter day one for Indiana. Also, Mekhi Jackson, right? A guy that we have yet to mention here on the show with the holidays and everything. Mekhi Jackson is coming in at the receiver spot, one that you had to have. You had to have a receiver. I still think you need more if you're Indiana, if I'm just being completely honest. We'll get to that in just a second, but I really like Mekhi Jackson. I mean, he's the App State transfer. This news came out on Christmas Eve, 6 foot, 200 pounds, who was all third team Sun Belt this past season at Appalachian State. I'm not going to just jump up and down and shoot fireworks in the air just yet. I want to see what he's got. Want to see what he does with his year of eligibility. Does have a redshirt option as well. So we'll see what he becomes. And then, of course, you have Fernando Mendoza, your starting quarterback next season. Also, Luis Moore, the safety from Ole Miss, who was from Indiana, right? So that was kind of cool. A guy that ended up leaving Indiana, went to play at Ole Miss, and then came back here to Indiana. Sounds like a weird thing, but in today's college football world, I just don't think it's all that. Crazy anymore. It's not all that weird and out there, I guess, is the best way to say that. So that's what Indiana has brought in, returning, and lost so far. And overall, I think it's pretty solid. But where do they go now? Is more news on the way? Where does Indiana have to go from here? We're talking about that coming up next, right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Rocket Money. Has Rocket Money helped you find any subscriptions you forgot about or the ones that you were paying for twice? It's happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I had no idea that I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit coming up in 2025. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, it's the subscription tracker that I've told you about. You're paying for something you don't know you're paying for. I'm just telling you right now, and Rocket Money can help you find it. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers, your daily Indiana Hoosiers podcast. Appreciate you being here. Shout out to all my everydayers. And like I said in the beginning, December is a record-breaking month, ladies and gentlemen. The best month in the history of the show, and you're the reason for that. That's on YouTube. That's on the audio side. So thank you so much for being a part of this. And look, we're just getting started, man. We're having an absolute blast over here, and I cannot thank you enough. And the ways that has happened is the things that you do every single day that I'm going to ask you to do again here today. If you're listening on audio, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, however you get it and listen to it on the way to work or in the kitchen or hey, I'm not judging. Wherever you listen to it, it's fine by me. Be sure that if you're able to subscribe on there, you do that. Turn those notifications on. Leave a 5-star review. That stuff helps us out so much on audio. And then for those of you that are watching on video on YouTube, be sure you like the video each and every time. It's easy. Just takes one tap of your thumb. Also, be sure you comment down below. What names or what positions does Indiana need to go after, Indiana football, that is, in the transfer portal? And then if you have not already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're already, ladies and gentlemen, over 4,100 subscribers. We just hit 4K like a week ago. So you guys are doing great. Really do appreciate all of your support. We've talked about where Indiana has already brought in, what they're bringing back, and what they've lost. And I want to reiterate this really quickly. I just don't think we've lost anything overly crazy. And I hate to say that. It has nothing to do with any of those players personally, has nothing to do with their ability or you see people are so nasty online, man. I mean, it has nothing to do with their personality or their lack of skill or their families or what. I mean, their representation, nothing like that. Nothing. This is purely football, man. Purely football. And I don't think Indiana has lost anything that they have not already replaced or cannot replace. And I'm impressed with what we've brought in so far. You went and got a starting quarterback. You went and got a starting running back. You went and filled your defensive line. You went and have so far started to rebuild some of that defense that you need help on. But the question is always, where do we go from here? What does Indiana need? And everybody is screaming this from the rooftops that wears these colors and represents the IU brand or is a fan of the IU brand. It's simple. You have to go get offensive linemen. Yes, you have to go get guys up front on the offensive line, because if you don't, you will be doomed. You saw that against Ohio State and you saw that against Notre Dame. And look, nothing against our offensive line. They were solid for a long time this year, for a lot of the games this year, but they were not good enough when it mattered most. And that is unfortunate. Now, for Indiana, in terms of the portal, we've lost an offensive lineman, a guy that was not with the team this year. He didn't play, so not really a big factor there. You've just got to go get experience, man, because here's what your offensive line sounds like. Okay, this is we'll do bottom to top, just looking at a list of it right here. Freshman to senior. Okay, here's what you got. You got Baylor Wilkin. Here are your freshmen. You got a lot of them. Wilkin, Parker, Merrick, Verstegen, Liebfried, I believe I pronounced that properly, Lawrence, and Ajani. Those are your freshmen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 freshmen in your offensive line room. Are you ready for this? You've got 1 sophomore, Austin Barrett. You've got 3 juniors, Carter Smith, Bray Lynch, and Drew Evans. And you have 2 seniors, Cooper Jones and Vinny Villasables. So that's what you have. That's it. You've got 2 seniors, 3 juniors, a sophomore, and the rest are freshmen. You have to go get people. And I know that there are lots of arguments, lots of discussions about we can't get offensive linemen from Northwestern State Community Technical College or Institute, right? We need to go get Power 4 guys. We have to get guys that can compete against the Ohio States and the Notre Dames of the world. And I totally agree. Totally agree. But in this dead period right now, there's not a whole lot happening. Visits aren't happening. Communication's not happening. So there's not a whole lot going on for Indiana in terms of news that could happen today. It could. Somebody could commit if they wanted to, I guess. but there's no communication happening right now. That opens up in just a few more days, and you better believe that Indiana's going to hit the ground hard. If you know it and I know it that we need offensive linemen, then I promise you Curt Cignetti and this staff know it, that they need offensive linemen. But you have to go get people. And whether that is from these group of 5 teams like Wyoming or North Dakota or whatever, FCS, I don't care, man. Or it is Power 4, you have to go get some big time players because look, Mendoza's really good. Hemby's really good. Mekhi Jackson's a good transfer receiver. You still bring back some of your best receivers from a year ago. But if you don't, heck, you brought in a tight end now, right? With Nowakowski. But if you don't have the offensive line to compete with Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, those types of teams, then you're going to be doomed in the big games. And I think that's what hurt Indiana in their big games, their 2 biggest games this season. And my point to all of this is I'm not picky at this point. Just go get dudes, get experience, get bodies, get a room that can compete where you have something to work with because it's not where it needs to be right now. And I'm telling you that Curt Cignetti and this Indiana staff, they understand that. Another position that I think Indiana needs to go after is wide receiver. I still think you need more wide receivers in that room. I love guys like EJ Williams and Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper. Love those guys. They're great players. They're coming back and your room is solid. You bring in Mekhi Jackson. He's an experienced guy from App State, right? We said 3rd team all Sun Belt. And you've got a lot of young puppies in there. You need more. You need more. You've got, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8 guys in there. Go get 1 or 2 more. It's not going to hurt. Experience is a huge part of this. And while Mekhi Jackson could be that 1-year rental, go get another one. Go get a sophomore. Go get a junior that you can bring in who can be here for a couple of years. Because guess what? EJ Williams, senior. Mekhi Jackson, senior. Surratt, senior, right? You've got dudes who are not going to be here the next year in your receiver room, and you've got to start building that. Your recruiting's been good, but you need more. You need more in the receiver room. So I look at offensive line, I look at receiver, and then I flip on to the defensive side of the football, and I look at the edge spot. I look at the edge spot because, yes, you bring back Kamara, which cannot be understated. I mean, cannot be overlooked. That is one of the biggest pieces of news in this offseason for Indiana football, but you've got to have some more depth. He's the only senior there. You've got 2 sophomores and 3 freshmen. You've got to go get somebody that has played legitimate football. Would love to get a Power 4 guy at the edge spot. I've heard of a couple of names, so keep this in mind, okay? Indiana's working at the edge spot now. And I will say this again, as bowl games are wrapping up and the college football playoff wraps up in the next several weeks, keep an eye out for guys that enter the portal at all of these positions that we have talked about because Indiana's on the market. And Indiana has become a popular place to be. Indiana has become a place folks want to go. They're starting to turn their head. They're starting to look. They're starting to make some calls. They're asking what's going on in Bloomington. And some of these guys want to be a part of it. And I'm telling you, Indiana has what it takes to compete in certain areas. So I'm looking at offensive line. I'm looking at wide receiver, and I'm looking at edge. I think you could talk corner. You could talk DB secondary. I think there's a legitimate conversation there too. But I'm looking at most important positions right now that Indiana has to go after. I look at offensive line. I look at wide receiver, and I look at the edge position on the defensive side of the football. All right, coming up in our final segment on Locked On Hoosiers, we're going to transition into basketball. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to be excited. I am, but when I see the same thing every single game, look, I'll just flat out tell you, I'm worried about this team. I'm worried about Indiana basketball. We'll talk about it right after this here on Locked On Hoosiers. All right, welcome in. Final segment on Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here as we are winding it down on this Monday as we approach the new year. How about that? Isn't that crazy? Hey, by the way, no show on New Year's Day. We will have one Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So just taking off the 1st of January. Then we'll be back to normal. Thursday, I believe we'll be back at the home base. Yeah, we'll be back in the home studio. So everything will look and sound back to normal. So appreciate you all bearing with me here over the holidays. But speaking of things that have happened over the holidays, Indiana basketball played this weekend. Yeah, they did. They played this weekend, and they played in their final non-conference game, and a game at home on a Sunday where everything should have been fine, right? Everything should have been fine. Indiana was favored by 12 or 13, I think it was, and you're getting ready for the restart of Big Ten play. They called it that on the broadcast. Really liked that, so I'm going to steal that. Getting ready for the Big Ten restart is what Indiana had in front of them over the weekend, where they let a Winthrop team come in here and hang with us again. We let a mid-major team who has not proven a whole lot yet this year. Yeah, they've got 10 wins. Like, that's cool. That's fine. But they're not up to our standard in terms of talent. And we let them come in here and compete with us for 40 minutes, like we've done the entire non-conference schedule for 2 years in a row now. 2 years in a row, we've done this crap right here. 77-68 final score. Indiana beats Winthrop to wrap up non-conference play and get ready for the Big Ten restart, again, to use that term. And look, we're 10-3, 1-1 in Big Ten play. All things considered, the record is not bad. After your abysmal performance in Atlantis, you beat Minnesota, who turns out to be one of the worst Power 5 teams in college basketball. Reminder, I say Power 5. You should say Power 6. I say Power 5 because of the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, the ACC, and I include the Big East in there because historically they're one of the best conferences in the entire history of college basketball. So I say Power 5 for basketball. So just keep that in mind. Minnesota's turned out to be one of the worst teams in the Power 5. So we'll hang our hat on that, I guess. And here's my problem, ladies and gentlemen. Here's my problem, folks. We are the same team every single game. There are no adjustments. There are no changes. There are no wrinkles. There's no effort. There's no energy. There is nothing for this Indiana team at all. What you saw on Sunday afternoon when Indiana beat Winthrop 77-68 and had to scratch and claw and fight and draw blood just to get out of this game with a win. What you saw in that game is what you're going to see for the entire Big Ten schedule. You mark my words, and it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be downright ugly because even without Oumar Ballo, I get that, and we're getting to that in just a second. This team is so stagnant. That's the word I continue to use. They're just like, it's like watching them move through molasses, man. They're just so slow, and there's nothing happening. There's nothing there. There is no offensive identity. There is no effort on defense. There's very little, what's the urgency? That's the word I'm looking for. Urgency to do anything. And for whatever reason, offensively, this team cannot figure out they suck at shooting threes. Sorry, you're just not good at it. So when you go against Winthrop at home in your own gym, by the way, when you go 1 of 20 from downtown, maybe let's stop shooting threes. Maybe let's just not shoot from out there anymore. Which is so sad because I think Mackenzie Mbako's a good shooter. I thought Luke Goody was a good shooter. But my goodness, those guys just have not shown up. And you can't go 1 of 20. Do you know what percentage that is? For you non-math majors out there, it's a 5% three-point percentage. 5 $5 foot long. That's what Indiana did from behind the three-point arc. It's unbelievable. I mean, I've never seen a team that bad, consistently bad, from behind the arc. Let me take a sidestep here and put a little positive sprinkle on this whole conversation. With Oumar Ballo being out, again, we're getting to that in just a second. How about Langdon Hatton? Playing his best game of his young Indiana career? He hasn't played very much at all. He played 26 minutes in this game. That's more, that blows everything else out of the water from what he's done. The points aren't going to blow you away. Had just 7 points. But ladies and gentlemen, he had 11 rebounds, had an assist, had a steal, 3 blocks, and 6 of those rebounds were offensive. How many extra possessions did Langdon Hatton give Indiana in this basketball game? He played with more effort, more energy, more passion for the IU, for the brand, for the colors that he wore. He played with more of that against Winthrop than anybody has all season long. That's embarrassing. That's bad for anybody else on this roster. Shout out Langdon Hatton. I hope he gets more minutes. Umar Ballo, if you come back or not, whatever. Play Langdon Hatton. Play a guy that wants to play. Play a guy that wants to be out there. One that makes Indiana better. Folks, Indiana loses this basketball game if Langdon Hatton doesn't exist. If Langdon Hatton does what he has done all season long, which is absolutely nothing, no disrespect, it's just the truth. If he does what he does all season long, or if he did on Sunday what he had done all season long, which again was nothing, Indiana would have lost this basketball game. They would have let Winthrop come in there and beat them in the non-conference finale. That's not okay. You should not have to rely on the 9th man off the bench to save you and to save your you-know-what to beat Winthrop in your own house. That's on you, Mike Woodson, because this team has not gotten any better. And let me address the Umar Ballo stuff here on the way out. Umar Ballo went through warmups. Umar Ballo did not play. We did not know he was on the questionable availability report. He did not play. Was it injury? Was it discipline? Was it something else, right? Let me say this. I've heard it all. I have tons of people telling me that it was discipline. I have people telling me undisclosed injury. I have people saying there's other issues going on. Nobody knows right now. But the best way to find out is to ask the head coach, right? Yeah, post-game media availability. Let's ask the head coach why Umar Ballo didn't play. You want to know what Mike Woodson had to say when he was asked about if Umar Ballo, why he didn't play? This is from Mike Woodson, the head coach now. He says, quote, "I'm not going to address that, but didn't have a lot of lead time. But that doesn't matter. Guys that are in uniform have got to play, and he didn't play tonight. And we'll sit down tomorrow and address this situation and get ready for Rutgers." What? What? I'm not going to address that. What do you mean you're not going to address it? He's your starting center who dressed out and didn't play. You're not going to give us anything? And this is as of this recording. If something does end up coming out throughout the day, apologies, and we'll react to it on tomorrow's episode. But you're not going to address it. That's unbelievable. That's unacceptable to me. You are the head coach. You've got to let the people know what's happening within your program, about your program, or maybe you just don't know. Maybe you just don't have a grip on your program, Woody, because you obviously don't have a grip on the game plan or the execution or preparation for your team in any basketball game. And I'm letting you know right now, folks, it's going to be nasty Big Ten play. It's going to be brutal. And he's going to lose his job. And I hate to be that way, but if things continue the way they're going right now, that is going to happen. Do I want that? No, I don't. And I hate to be the Debbie Downer here on the way out, but what I've seen in these 13 games have been horrific. It's been bad. And the Big Ten, all the other teams have started to get better and find a groove, and Indiana's going in the complete wrong direction. So, look, non-conference play is over. Rutgers comes to town. We'll see what we can do against one of the most talented teams in the Big Ten and possibly in all of college basketball. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you so much again for being here. Appreciate you and all of your support, whether you're an everydayer, whether you come back here and there, or this is your first time. Really appreciate you being here. Again, for those of you on YouTube, like the video, comment your thoughts down below on Indiana basketball. Can you say something that hadn't already been said? Good luck. I'll see if I can read through some of these and see if I find one that's interesting and makes me laugh, okay? And then be sure that you subscribe to the channel as well. For those of you on audio, do the same, okay? We're back tomorrow for New Year's Eve. How about that, Hoosier fans? We get you ready for 2025. That's coming up tomorrow right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Until then, stay safe. I'll talk to you later.